Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators, and we have been working with basically all the major publishers in the last 25 years. And between us, we've published about 50 books, and we've all taught at universities.
Yep, and each week we tackle a subject related to illustration from 3 different perspectives. Sometimes we're going to agree, other times we are not going to agree, but every time you're going to learn something new.
Sounds good. All right, so today's topic is, it's all on Lee. Lee has been scouring our forums and asking subscribers for questions, just random illustration questions. And you want to just take it?
Yeah.
Lee?
So this is our mailbag. So I put out a post that was just said, hey, what are some questions you guys have about illustration or whatever you actually want to talk about? And these are some specific questions from some viewers, and then also some general questions just from the forums that I found just as I kind of went through them. Will and Jake don't know what I'm going to be asking, so this is from the cuff, unplanned disaster, probably.
Hey, before we get going, I think it's important to let people know that you don't have to be a subscriber to join in our forums. A lot of people aren't subscribed, and it's just a great hangout. It's a great place for like-minded people that are trying to get published, or who are recently published, or who are trying to get better at illustration, who have questions concerning basically any kind of publishing illustration, be it children's books or comic books or book covers. It's a place where people have kind of found that it's what's interesting to me is that it's not the same vibe as like Facebook. You know, it really is a supportive community.
Yeah, it really is. And we've got every single level there, from people who are just starting out saying, hey, I've always been interested in this, but I have never done it. So here I am, all the way up to people who are like, hey, I just got my first book deal. And they're turning pro or actually seasoned pro. Me and Jake and Will are on there too. So it's pretty fun place. You can post images and get feedback, and the feedback is good. I should warn though, here's my forum warning. I have noticed that sometimes people post so fast they haven't tried to solve the problem themselves. They just post too early. So it's an interesting little dynamic with the forum. So you do want to try to solve your problems, because some people do basically a half done full painting, and they'll be like, what do you guys think? And be like, well, maybe you should do some more sketches. Anyway, we're
are you saying that they will post something that they should have worked out in the sketch stage?
Yeah, they're kind of bailing on the early process work, which we'll talk about later, because there's a question that actually relates to that. So let's dive in. Yeah, we'll get to that, because it's an interesting dynamic. But the forums are cool because you can post finished paintings, you can post sketches, you can post whatever you want to, and get feedback. And people do give feedback. It's a really dynamic, kind of robust forum at this point. So it's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and dive in. So I'm going to do specific questions from actual subscribers, and then some of the more generic questions that I kind of found through the forums. This first question is from Eric Castleman, and the question is, where do we see ourselves in 10 years?
Then he's saying us, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
That is an interesting question, because we're kind of pretty well established into our careers. And so I don't do that much for that far of thinking like I used to, where I really knew like, hey, I'm trying to get into publishing, and it's a really clear goal. So it's actually a great question.
Yeah. So I just want to say, I want to make sure this is helpful for people listening too. If someone random just rolled up and started listening to this episode, do they care? They don't know where I've been for the last 10 years, right?
Good point.
But I do want to say that having a 10-year plan, I think, is advantageous, and you should have that. I also have had 5-year plans and 2-year plans and 1-year plans, and currently I'm probably working on a 5-year plan right now. But what you want to have in your plan, in your 5 or 10-year plan, is sort of big projects you want to accomplish, and you want to look at those projects like, what do I want to do this year? What do I want to do the next year? Maybe set a goal to do a project per year or a project every 2 years. Oftentimes what happens is you get so involved in this one big project that you're working on. Maybe it's a graphic novel, maybe it's a children's book, maybe it's a board game that you're designing, something like that, something that's beefy and big. And you keep noodling on it, and you keep working on it and noodling on it and perfecting it. Oh, now I'm a better artist, so I'm going to redo the first art that I did. And then another year passes. Well, now I'm better than that art, and so I'm going to redo that art again. And what happens is you get 10 years into this project, and you still haven't released anything. So, or 5 years or whatever. So making an actual plan, I think, helps you get the things done that you need to get done to advance your career, and it sort of keeps you in check as you refer back to that plan. Now, for me personally, in the next 10 years, let's see, I turn 41 next month. So by the time I'm 51, I want to have another 10 children's books finished. I want to have maybe 5 graphic novels drawn, and I'd like to see what next level I could take some of those projects to, whether it's, do they become something bigger than just the original story that I came up with? Are they a movie? Are they a TV show? Or are they a video game or something like that? I'd like to branch out and explore some other areas like that.
Really good. Will, do you know what you're going to do?
Yeah. So, where I've been, I've been illustrating children's books. I've been, I had a long career doing editorial illustration and advertising illustration. And right now I'm finding that I wouldn't call it burnout at all. I would say that I have matured. That's a better way to put it, right? I've matured to the point where I really value the projects that I work on. And I'm not concerned with just getting another book out. Mm-hmm. So now that we got Bonaparte Falls Apart out with Random House, and I'm starting on the second book, I'm really excited to make the series, and hopefully we get to keep making these books. And that's kind of the plan right now, as long as the sales are up. So that's fulfilling that creative side. But the other side really is, and I noticed this when I was teaching at the university, teaching illustration, and I noticed it when I was a student, is that most classes that I've seen, and I've been in other teachers' classrooms, it seems like the way that they teach illustration is to basically, it's actually kind of easy in that you show up at school, they give assignments, like illustration assignments, and then the concepts of color, design, drawing, all of those different concepts are kind of happen in the critique process, which is a great way to do it. Mm-hmm. But with what we're doing online with SVS, SVSLearn.com, we have to present in a different way. We don't have a physical classroom where people are meeting. We're meeting online. And so what I find is we have to distill all those lessons in a really, really nicely packaged set of videos that people can watch. And then if they're in an interactive class, they can get critiques based on the stuff that they learned. And I've found that curriculum at the university level usually doesn't exist in the same way that we're trying to put it out there right now. And I love creating these classes. And so right now, I'm actually working on a creative composition class. After that, I'll probably either do the painting, color, and light, and then the children's book class. And I'm updating them. And basically, this is a long-winded way of saying I love teaching, and I love trying to organize this information because it was the kind of thing that I didn't have when I was in school. And what I kind of craved was something more concrete than the bits and pieces that would come in critiques. Even though it worked, it seemed more frustrating than to get more of that solid concrete material to where I could evaluate it and then move forward with more of an expectation of success when I was working on an illustration. Anyway, I hope that that's what our students are getting, but that's what I'm working on now. And I see that taking me the next couple of years to really nail the content that I'm going to be doing. And as part of the 10-year plan, I really want to get that stuff done so that I can spend more time just critiquing, and I can tell the students, you need to go back and look at this,
Right.
And balancing that with my children's books, and then eventually writing and spending time doing that is kind of the 10-year plan, to try to get some of my own books written and out the door.
Right on. Good plan. For me, I kind of like what Jake was saying about, some of our readers might not know what we've been doing the past 10 years. And, it's funny because sometimes you think what your goals are as a professional, like once you get them, everything will be perfect. Like I used to think if I could just get published, everything would be great. Some of you guys might be thinking that out there. And then you get published, and then there's a next set of problems and a next set of problems. And what a lot of people don't know about businesses is that, and illustration is a business, by the way, and it's something we enjoy doing, you got to think of it like like any small business. It's hard to grow. Like a success actually brings some problems with it. And some of the problems, like if I look back on my previous 10 years, were successful. Like I was successful in all the stuff that I did, but to the point where I was kind of frantic. Jake, Will, and I had an advisor recently give us a questionnaire, basically because we're trying to just figure out what our goals are for SVS. And he said, well, in order to figure out what your goals are, we need to kind of know a little bit more about you. And he gave us this questionnaire, and it was kind of profound. He gave us a one question that said, what's your ideal day? And it kind of threw me a little bit because I'm like, I've never actually thought about that. Because normally I'm like, well, I got 2 classes I'm building, and then I have a gallery show next month, and then I have 2 books that I'm working on. And it's just like this frantic kind of pace. And that question really pulled me out and said, oh my gosh, okay, at this point, I don't need to do all these things all at the same time at 100% pace. And so that's what success is. I think a lot of times in those early years, it's just building, and you're flying, and you're, staying up late, and you're turning in all this work. But like Will said, I want to start focusing on the quality and slow down quite a bit. And so I don't need to be doing 10 art fairs and 4 gallery shows and 3 books a year while teaching 4 classes. That's just too much. So when I stood back and said, how would I want to spend my day? It kind of opened up what my next 10 years are, which is I enjoy writing books. The content, creating the content for what the illustrations are going to be is a new thing for me. And it's so enjoyable to really craft a story and to think about how much meaning I can put into it. And then learning, the new part of learning how words go together in the same way that we originally learned illustration. There's all these mistakes we're making, and the writing's horrible, but it's fun because you're learning it. So I want to be writing in 10 years, writing my own books, maybe 1 book per year. And then like Will said too, these classes with SVS have been transformative because after teaching at the university for 10 years, and running into all this red tape when there's an essential class that I think's needed and I can't get it into the curriculum, it drives me crazy. And with what we're doing now is we're like, hey, we need a digital painting class. Okay, here it is. Let's do it. And then we can make whatever we want. And the results, I didn't know how the results were going to be on an online class, but they've been awesome and more interactive than I thought they would be. And so I'm just encouraged about that. So I want to teach a couple of classes per year that are very focused into stuff that I'm the best at teaching, and then doing these books and then trying to recruit other teachers and stuff. So that's kind of my 10-year plan. We'll see how it goes, but basically slowing down and focusing on meaning and quality.
Very good.
Okay. So next question is from Raj Solanki. Maybe Solansky. We'll see about my typing skills on transferring some of these questions because I feel like an S should be in there, but maybe not. Anyway, so the question is, how do you get ready for a Comic-Con or art fair? What are the differences between those two things? And how I read that question is, for a lot of our students, is probably, how do I even think about beginning this process of being in there?
Yeah. That's a huge question.
It's a big question. Maybe we can abbreviate it.
10 podcasts.
And we are putting together a class, by the way, on that. I don't know if it'll be an interactive class, but it's definitely going to be a video because a lot of people are wondering about it. And all 3 of us are doing it and making a significant amount of income from it. And so it's been a very lucrative kind of thing. But there's no rule book for a lot of this stuff. There's no guide. And so each of us just having to figure out all these mistakes on our own, and everybody's work is going to be different. So there's a little bit of variables, but there are some overlapping principles. that kind of get into it. And I'll just go over just a quick just kind of overriding principle. And that is start small, try to gauge interest in the work and what kind of work people are into. So the first step is, what's the smallest thing you can do? And that is go to an art fair or go to a Comic-Con and just look and see what the price points are. Watch people's booths who has work that you like or similar to yours. How much traffic are they getting? Are they making a lot of sales? Like basically your research and development. It's free to do research and development. Yep. It's very expensive to jump quick.
It's funny that you said that, because that was exactly what I thought when I heard the question is, you got to go, and it's surprising how many people are unprepared when they do a Kickstarter or when they do a convention.
Yeah.
And it's like you start asking them questions about their project, and it's obvious they're not a consumer of Kickstarter. They're not a consumer of conventions. And the thing that I would advise is, when you're there, if you should probably go to more than one convention, but try to reverse engineer what you're going to do by asking yourself this question: which tables are you afraid to walk up to and why? Mm-hmm. And which tables do you have no problem walking up to and why? And of course, you want to be the latter. But it's surprising to me how many people put on customer repellent at their booth. They figure out exactly what not to do. We should do a parody video on that sometime.
It'd be good.
Yeah. How not to do it.
That we'll cover that in the class for sure. But yeah,
I want to add to that though, Will. What made you attracted to a booth? What made you stop and in your tracks? And if you look at that might also give you some answers as to how to set up your booth. And also, if you leave buying anything, like deconstruct that. Why did you buy from this person? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can talk to people too at the cons or the art fairs. You can go in and if you see a booth you really like, don't be the person who wants every single answer, but you can have a couple of questions like, hey, where'd you get this banner printed? Or where did you get this print bin? Or, some other kind of question. Where do you get your work printed? Do you do it yourself? Just a couple of basic questions, but don't sit there and interview the artist for an hour because they're trying to work. But you can ask questions, and I've had a lot of people, and most artists are very free with that information. A couple will probably not be, but don't worry about it. Just think about the overall average. I guess I should clarify what's the difference between a Comic-Con and an art fair. And I'm not actually sure of what that is. I haven't actually vocalized it before, so this would be kind of clumsy. The market that I'm in is the art fair market. And so those are typically, not always, but typically set up outdoors. They're venues in typically more expensive cities. These are the better ones, by the way. More expensive cities. So that means the buyer has more disposable income. They are not a fan in any way like they are at Comic-Cons, which we'll get into in a second, but they are connoisseurs of art, and they're looking for something that will go good over their couch. I hate to say that because it's like the most unsexy way to say it. But I mean, I do get people, they're looking at a $2,000 painting and they're like, does this green match our couch? I'm like, okay, but that comes with it. That's what they're looking for. And a lot of times they are definitely buyers of original art, or they're looking for something unique. They're not going to buy something that's Superman or something like that. It's a different crowd. And so it's a little bit more fine art based. The price points are much higher. I've seen sculptures go for as high as $60,000. I sell my originals there. My price point's about $2,000 to $5,000, and you get people that buy that stuff. That's not where I started, by the way, but that's kind of the market that I'm going for. The Comic-Cons are a little bit different. They're typically indoor, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but they're indoor. You can start with a table, which is an awesome way to start. It's a little bit smaller than like a full booth. And you do get aficionados of certain kinds of content or memorabilia. The price point's typically a lot smaller, but the volume can be high. Will has made just as much money as I have at a show, and the price point's a little bit lower, but he's selling a lot more stuff.
A lot lower, yeah, and you sell on volume.
Right. Yeah. You guys, you want to add anything to that? That's kind of the differences?
I think you nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say the Comic-Con stuff is easier to get into than the art fair stuff. The art fair stuff is a juried process when you apply, and I'm only like a 50% success rate. So if I want to do 8 shows in a year, I have to apply for like 20 to 30, and I get into about half of that, and then I go to about half of that.
I want to say too, ask yourself why you want to do a show. Like, what is it? Is it validation? Like, I've never sold my artwork before and I just need to know that people are interested in it. Is it to make money? Is it to build a stronger fan base or more personalized fan base? Once you know why you're going into it, then you'll have a much better measuring tool to see if you're successful or not, according to why you did this. And they're hard and they're a lot of work and they can be expensive to set up. So you know whether or not you're getting a return on your investment, whether it's a time investment or financial investment. So ask those questions to yourself, and then that'll give you a better idea of why you want to get into this thing. And maybe the answers to those questions might tell you whether or not it's a thing you even want to do. And there might be other ways to make money and other ways to build a fan base and other ways to validate, to get validation for your work.
Yep, really good. But check them out. Step 1 is always just check them out, ask questions, and then get into it small. Maybe pick like 10 prints, buy a table at like we have one in Portland called the Rose City Comic-Con. It's really cheap to get into. You can share a table even. And then so you can just get in and see what people think, and you'll start to understand it from there. Okay, so next question. This one's from Simona. Again, very difficult last name. Secarelli?
Secarelli.
That's how I thought it was going to be pronounced. Sorry, Simona, if we mangled that. Okay, so let's see. We've addressed this in a third Thursday, but we'll kind of top it off or see if it's changed a little bit. The question is, what are some of your methods and approaches for, she's got 3 questions, by the way. What are your methods and approaches for time efficiency and consistency when working on a long series of illustrations? So it does change the dynamic a little bit. We've talked about productivity and things like that, but a long project is a different beast. So that's kind of what she's wondering is like, what's the difference between a long and a short process, and how do you just stay motivated and work your way to the finish?
I have a couple of ideas that just kind of popped in, and this might not apply to everyone because everyone's style is a little bit differently, how they work, whether they're working traditionally or digitally. I happen to have switched over to working digitally now. And so, but one thing, I believe she does too. But one thing that I've found that helps is I will, sorry, that distracted me. The light getting turned off.
Someone just turned off our lights and then turned them back on.
Okay. So one of the things that comes to mind is I'll paint, like let's say I have a lot of grassy scenes,
Okay.
The things that are meticulous, hair, grass, those kinds of textures that take forever. I will paint up sometimes a whole sheet, a whole digital document of just grass. And then I'll reuse it, I'll flip it, I'll, move it around. Anything to save from having to, hand render every blade of grass,
right,
on every page. That's one thing. Another shortcut I found for character consistency is really doing a lot of head studies for characters that repeat a lot and doing them at different angles and just drawing those ahead of time and really trying to nail them. And then I can kind of grab them and throw them in a composition. I'll do like high angle, low angle, straight on, kind of almost the same process that they use for stop motion where they'll, like for Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, I believe they had like 30 or 35 Jack Skellington heads with different expressions, different mouth moves and everything. And I don't go to that length and do that many, but I've really found that it's a time saver to just kind of draw them and then be able to throw them in the right place. And sometimes there's little modifications that need to be made, but those are little hacks that I've come up with.
And so but say you're halfway through the book, you have zero motivation to finish it, and you're just looking at that deadline, and it's like a month away, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to work on it in 2 weeks. What is it that gets you to like finish that book? How do you get motivated?
I think you chose the wrong project if that's the problem.
No, dude, it happens every time I do something, I end up hating it about midway through.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I kind of want it to be done. I mean, it just goes with my personality. I don't know if this happens to you, but I just want to move on.
Okay, let me ask you this then. Do you paint the fun ones first?
Well,
and save the bad ones? Because I could see that.
I've messed around with a lot of different models of that. So what I do is I start with my absolute favorite spread. Because you just I just want that one that I can,
and you got to get
and if I'm working digitally, I print it out on real nice paper. I hang it up in the studio, and it's kind of my beacon, as I go through it. And so I try to alternate between, I pick my best spread, my favorite, and then I pick the hardest, worst one, the one that I'm nervous about second. Because I still have enough energy. I just finished one that I really like, and you don't want that spread to be the last one you do.
Right.
Right.
And then I try. I've learned over a long period of time. It took a long time to learn this one. Is that I try to schedule it to where it's not a marathon, and I'm only working on this one project, and that's the only thing I'm seeing from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. I try to have other projects like I'll try to have at least a couple of paintings or something that I'm doing just for fun, because if you just bear down on that one project, it will lead to burnout for sure.
Yeah, you start to get sick of it. Yeah, it's funny because I'm the same way. I always save either the best or the second best for last. And by that, it's funny because like, when I was in school, I used to think, okay, every painting in the book has to be of equal value. No, some are utilitarian illustrations that just get you through the story. They're just moving it along, and they're boring, and they're not inspiring, right?
Yeah, you can't help it. It happens. I always think back, I did this book project. This is probably 12 years ago now, so it shows you how bad this illustration was. But it was a utilitarian illustration, and I had to use the worst illustrative device, which is a idea bubble above the character's head, because I wasn't a good storyteller. And I knew it at the time that it wasn't a good solution, but I just remember dreading painting that spread. And it's not going to be a great spread. I had other ones that were good from that book, but yeah, all spreads are not created equal.
Yeah. I think for me, what I do is I make a visual checklist that I can check off each step of the process. And I love looking at that thing, and I love coloring in the little squares that said I finished it. So I'll have layouts, rough sketches, final line work, color, and each of those are their own column, and each of them have a little box for every page. And then I could just go through and be like, okay, today I was able to color in 5 boxes. I did 2. I sketched out 5 pages. That's good, and that kind of keeps me motivated because I like that visual. I like visually seeing that this thing is actually getting finished.
That's cool. So that's a good
helps.
one.
And the other thing too is what you want to do is, if you haven't done a project like this before, it's your first big project, time how long it takes to do the first couple of illustrations, and just take very close notes of how long you spent on it. And then you can use that to plan out the rest of the book and budget your time for the rest of the book. And that way you don't, you're not scrambling at the end, and you're spreading this out over, a good amount of times, and so that you can fit in other projects in the middle so that you don't get bored with this.
Yeah.
I just realized something with that topic. This is why one of the reasons why I love having these. I love doing Third Thursday, and now this podcast is. I'm learning. I've never talked about this before with anybody. Do you guys do the same thing? Do you save the good ones for last, or you do the best one first, and things like that?
I actually will do. I kind of do what Lee was saying is I'll do maybe not the best favorite spread first, but I'll do one that I'm really looking forward to, and that also the publisher a lot of times wants to see one just so they know you're going to do it in the style that they're expecting, and just make sure that like everything's working to what they're planning on. So I'll pick one that has, some fun stuff in it and do that. But usually I'll save some of the the better ones for last.
Another little tip that I might just bring in, it doesn't really relate, but it does in another way, is that I don't ever tell my editor how far along I actually am. I'm like, I get further than what they think I am in case something goes wrong and I need more time for something, in case I get sick or whatever. I always want to work a little ahead of where they think I am.
I tell you, one tip too, along that same line of thinking that I use with clients is if I get jammed up and I do start to bump up against that deadline where you start to feel that panic, which will then force you into overworking, which then forces you into burnout. I contact my client early now and just say, can I have another week? Can I have another month? I always ask for more than I'm actually needing. And I'd say 95% of the time, they're like, oh yeah, no, yeah, sure. I mean, they don't even care. They don't even push back at all most of the time. Sometimes there is a hard deadline. So there is always the exception to that rule, but it's amazing how early in my career, I would struggle to make these deadlines that were maybe arbitrary or could have been moved. I just didn't want, when you're just nervous when you're starting out and you're like, I don't want them to think that I can't hit the deadline.
And you're afraid that they're going to say, okay, then the deal's
Yeah,
off.
you're terrible.
You just asked for more, so now we're going to give it to someone else.
And don't fool yourself. Don't think that they haven't padded everything out.
Yeah, they totally do.
When they set a schedule, they know something's going to happen either on their end or your end. So it's in there, even though it's not spoken. Except
sometimes, every now and then, you're saving the project from the illustrator that failed.
Yeah, and they'll tell you normally.
Really are. Yeah, that's.
But the other part of that one too is just being really open. Like what can make a long-term project really fun is sometimes I'll do, like, for a spread, I'll do 2 different colorways, or I'll do 2 different facial expressions or something like that. And I'll just kind of send them both to my client and say, hey, I got this idea. Which one do you think hits it better? And it's this banter that kind of keeps you going, like, hey, we're in this together. It's not just me in my studio and I have to deliver this perfect project. I hope you like it,
Right.
Yeah.
So open communication can definitely help that.
Yep.
Cool.
I'm going to skip her second question. But the third question she had is there a difference what are the differences between being an illustrator or being a writer illustrator? And I'd like to change that question a little bit. What I see that as is being an illustrator versus a content creator.
Yeah.
You guys want to speak to that?
Yeah. So I would say the big difference, I've illustrated 10 books, something like that. One of those books was one that I wrote as well. And then I've written some other, these are just children's books. I've also written and drawn comics a lot. But as far as children's books and illustrating that is concerned, it took longer to write the book than to actually draw it. It was hard. It was just trying to get the little nuances in how the pages should flow, just the word wise, verbally, I guess. Finding the right words, finding how the story should actually be wrapped up and tied up in a bow at the end. And there's 100 different versions that you could do. What is the version that's best for this story? And so I found, for me personally, it was a lot harder to write it than it was to sit down and illustrate it. And I think that means I'm primarily an illustrator as opposed to a writer. I do come up with a lot of stories and come up with things like that. But I think the main difference between the two is you are responsible for creating the entire world and motivating your characters and finding what drives them and finding what hurts them and how they deal with those things. Whereas I feel like illustrating a book, you're handed a script, it's all figured out, or a manuscript, it's all figured out. You just have to visualize it, and some of that hard work's already been done,
Yeah. I think though with the content creator, you're ensuring your own longevity in this career. Mm-hmm. It's not like you have to be only one or the other, but if you are a content creator and you're making things, there's never a time where it runs out. Like if you're waiting for the phone to ring. There's nothing more anxiety producing than not having work. And then you're just hoping somebody calls you.
Right.
Whereas if you're a content creator, you just keep moving. You keep moving forward. And then a lot of times clients relate to that stuff that you're making on your own. They'll give you other projects. Kind of like Will's Bonaparte book, actually. He's doing all these drawings, and then a client sees it and says, hey, he'd be perfect for this project. And then he gets a regular illustration gig out of the thing that he was content creating.
Yeah. I think another aspect of this question would be, as someone who has never written their own book, I've written a lot of books, but I haven't gotten one published yet. Close with Scholastic one time, then got really disappointed. But I think the mindset is going to be that when you're dealing with an author who doesn't illustrate, their writing process is definitely going to be different than someone like, when Jake was doing Robot and Sparrow. I think the question that and maybe you can speak to this, Jake, but I think the question you're asking yourself is, what can I leave out of the text? Mm-hmm. and cover in the illustration, and what do I need to write in the text? And I don't think that the author isn't asking themselves that question. And I think that's one reason why the publishing world loves the single person creator, author, illustrator a lot, is that in a perfect world, I think they can create a more efficient book. And that's not to take away anything from separate author and illustrators, because some of the best books ever have been done by teams like that. But I just think your approach is going to be different.
That's a good point, Will. That success will come easier for the writer illustrator, in terms of getting an agent and in terms of getting your foot in the door for publishing as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think too. I have gotten manuscripts where I'm illustrating for it, and I'm realizing there's no way to do this without the picture showing exactly what the words are saying. And what's happened many times is they'll come back, they'll see my illustrations, and there'll be another pass on the writing side where they realize, we could take out some of this dialogue, some of this words, just so that the pictures and the words flow together. But when you're doing that all yourself, you could have a wordless spread that doesn't, there's no words, but it still advances the story, and it's still very important to the story. And you see a lot of that stuff in like Dan Santat's work, who's a writer, illustrator. You see it in like John Klassen's stuff as well. All the really successful illustrators / authors are doing that kind of stuff. And I think too, you also look at the award winners, and some of these best-selling books are these people who are both the writer and the illustrator. But I want to just reiterate what Lee was saying too, is you want to be a part of the creation of something, your own thing. You want to make one of your own things, and try that out. Even if you're just wanting to be an illustrator, still try to make your own thing, because it helps you understand what the author you're going to be working with next time, kind of what they've been going through, and understand, the process from their perspective as well.
And it also changes. I'll just add one little aside here. It changes how you think when you're building something on your own, whether it's illustrations or not. It changes everything. Like when I was at Art Center, I came up with an idea I minored in industrial design and entertainment design, and halfway through, I came up with this idea to make basically a 6-pack of heads. So picture like a 6-pack of beer, except for its heads, because I was in a head drawing class, and they had the I can't remember the John Asaro head. You guys know what I'm talking about, where it's basically the planes of the head. Looks like
yeah,
it looks like those, like, just classic kind of way of learning the head. It's just broken up into planes and stuff. And we had one of these big glass sculptures there, and I was just thinking to myself, I can't believe that's a glass sculpture. Why would they make a glass sculpture? Nope, it's not available for purchase. And I would have loved to have this at home and had the planes of the head, but then next to it had a little, like, 5-inch tall head that was like a male version of an idealized head and a female version of an idealized head. And I kind of walked through 6 different kinds of heads that you could buy as a little pack. And so I made up these molds And and my wife was making so much fun of me because of this dumb product. But I just kind of ran with the whole thing and I made them. I mean, I actually sculpted them all out. And then of course you get into the actual manufacturing process, which was way over my head. I had no money. So fast forward 10 years, like that idea went away, but just the process of being involved in, hey, I see this opportunity that I can make something. I think I'm going to try to do it, has permeated my whole career. It comes up over and over and over again where I throw myself in. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but you're just a builder of things. It doesn't have to be one kind of thing. But anyway, the ending to that little anecdote story is 10 years later, just recently, I went to an art store and there is a 6-pack of heads on the shelf. I could not believe it. I sent a picture to Lisa and I was like, see, I told you that was a good idea.
What flavor were they?
Oh my gosh. It was almost exactly what I sculpted. I mean, I don't even want to look it up on who, if it's somebody I went to school with, I'm going to be really angry. But I've done that over and over.
There's another important lesson there too. And that is, I think a lot of times is, we've been talking about being the creator. I think what paralyzes a lot of us is that we ask ourselves that question of what gives us the right instead of asking the question, why not, why not me?
Yeah.
And boy, I think it comes down to the fear of failure. As we've talked about before, failure is part of the creative process. So if you can't get comfortable with failure, you're probably not ever going to be a creator.
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
Got to throw yourself out there and just do it.
All right. Next question.
All right, let's move on to the next question. This is from Michelle M. She says, what is your step-by-step for studying other people's work and doing master copies?
That's a good question. So it probably starts with figuring out the actual gesture of what they've done. You want to start from the ground up. You're not going to be painting a thing just straight up copying the eye and painting the eye and then copying the nose and painting the nose. You want to get the gesture of it. How are they sitting in the chair, or how are they running? If it's a figure that you're doing, or if it's something else, what is the actual structure of it? So it goes gesture, then it goes structure. So making sure that the planes are right on the head, the head's positioned right. And then I think you start building in and you work on shadow, light, color. A lot of times you might be able to find books on how, if it's someone really well known, there'll be process books to show some of the steps of how they work, or people have trained that way. And you might want to go and follow that same pattern. They'll put in the dark umber first and sort of build it up from that. And I think that's how I would do it. If you want to do someone that's maybe it's a children's book illustrator who's contemporary that's working today, I would go about it the same process, and maybe even contact them and just say, "What's your process?" and try to follow the same thing. And then see how you can apply all that to your own stuff. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think there's a step before that. I think all that is definitely solid for once you're producing. But I think the bigger question for master copies is, which master copy are you doing? Why are you copying this thing? I mean, just in a base, broad kind of question. And where that leads me is the dream portfolio assignment that I've been giving that for years now, that is put together 10 to 20 pieces of work that you wish that you did. I mean, literally, it's right in line with if I could snap my fingers and be as good as I could possibly be, this grouping would be it. And then look for the consistency within that group is, for example, all the work done in pen and ink, but you don't have any pen and ink in your portfolio, but you picked everybody. And this has literally happened almost every time people pick this grouping, and there is a dominant theme, whether it's subject matter or whether it's media or technique. And once it's all together, you're like, oh my gosh, there's this thing that I want to do that I didn't even really have clarity on. And so I kind of back up and say, why am I attracted to this group of images or these artists and try to find that common thread and see if I've related to it in my own work yet, or if not, then that's the number one breakthrough. I don't even have to do any work yet. It's like all of a sudden, oh wow, I really like pen and ink, but I'm painting in oil, and there's a disconnect there. So then once you have grouped them together, then you start saying, is there a consistent approach to these images that is, and once you figure that out, it's awesome. You're like, oh, everybody uses like this dark accent black, or everybody's using real flat colors or some other kind of thing. So then you're just going through and just checking off why you pick this group and the similarities and the differences between them. And then once you've got all that down, that's when you get into actually starting to make the work. And then it's a little bit more informed, instead of like what Jake was originally saying, like, oh, there's, you don't want to start out, oh, I just picked this image randomly and now I'm painting the eye. You want it to be more informed than that. And so once I have my images together and then I know kind of why I picked that grouping of images, I break down each one of them in detail. Like there's darks here, or there's an underpainting showing here, or, whatever kind of thing you can find. They're using diagonal compositions in all of them. I just write it all out. I have arrows pointing to stuff. It becomes a diagram. And I study the image first, and then I actually make the image. And so there's, like 4 steps before I'm actually putting pigment on paper or, working on the computer.
You're like an illustration Da Vinci kind of.
I had to be, because I was so late to art and illustration that's how I had to catch up, and it really did work.
That is awesome. It's an awesome story. I think about you a lot in terms of that, like. It took me so long, and you just kind of sped right in. But I think you can accelerate by being smart and making deliberate moves like that. One for me, and this is when I reverse engineer kind of my process, because I definitely had people that I was looking like, and I've talked about them before. People that I probably copied too much in my style early on. But one of the things that I really tried to do, and I never verbalized this, and no one ever told me to do this, but I really wanted to get to know the artist through their work and try to understand, like, why did they make that decision? Oh, it's because if they didn't, it would have made it harder. And specifically, I'm thinking of like stylizations, because my work is stylized. It's not what you would call realistic. And so I'm, you're making shorthand statements for, let's say, facial features, or you're making shorthand statements for complex objects such as a tree with millions of leaves, right? And I would say, I would ask, I would see the shapes that they were making, and I would go, oh, you can see it this way, and that this is what they're trying to solve. This is the problem they're trying to solve, and that really helped me as an artist to be able to say, it doesn't have to be the way that I thought it was in my mind. And again, as you're an early illustrator, you're basically doing everything wrong, right? When you're starting out. So I would say, well, obviously my initial intuition was wrong. So how did they solve that problem? And it helps. It helps so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys should be doing master copies. That's for sure. And putting these things together and analyzing work in this way. One of the big things I always advocate against is the advice to just draw a lot. I mean, it's good advice, but in the most generic way. If you're drawing and painting all the time, but with a purpose to move yourself forward, it's going to accelerate you, light years.
Yeah. I feel like I say this so much, but when you are learning an instrument, you're not just told to just play whatever you want. Just figure out what all those buttons do on the piano. Right. Buttons. What all the keys do on the piano.
Jake's talking about his 1980s synthesizer that he plays.
Yeah. But you're never told that. You're always told, here's Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Here's what the note is. Now play it. And before you're ever writing your own music, you've memorized, 100 different pieces that you could play, or you can look at music and read it. And I feel like that is always skipped in art. Yeah. People think, I have to just come up with it on my own.
It's the same with writing.
It's a weird thing with writing.
Really become fluent.
Yeah, with writing and illustration or art, visual art. It's the only creative field that does that. I mean, if you look at martial arts, there's a path. If you look at music, there's a path. If you look at sports and athletes, there's a path. For us, it's just like, just do whatever you want to and hope it's good. It's really bizarre. As a matter of fact, using that, for my basic classes, my 100 and 200 level classes that I taught at the university, I came up with a Kung Fu belt grading system where they started at a white belt, they moved to a yellow belt, and I wouldn't let them move to the next belt until they had 90% efficiency in the thing I was trying to teach. It was pretty awesome. I got great results doing that because there was just that built-in understanding of how martial arts works, and so people could just relate to it. It made things concrete.
That's really cool.
It was really fun. Okay, so the next question is, this is a short one from Todd Ackerman. If you could illustrate a small story based off of one of your favorite songs, which would it be?
Oh, man.
While you guys are gathering your thoughts, I'll tell a little story because I don't know what song mine would be. Probably something from Tom York. I've been listening to a lot of Tom York lately.
Radiohead.
He's awesome. Just so good. But more so Tom York without Radiohead, even though I like Radiohead. I like Tom York better. David Hone and I both teach the illustration class, and we've kind of traded off teaching an illustration class at the local university. And there's this assignment. David came up with it, so I don't want to take credit for it. But the assignment is the students have to pick a song, they have to illustrate the song, and then in class we put up all the work, and then we play the song and we try to guess which illustration goes with the song. And it's awesome. It's really cool because it can't just be about the lyrics. It has to be about how it feels. And it was good. And a lot of the times, I'd say we probably had a 70% success rate on guessing the song to the illustration. Pretty fun.
Wow. It's a really creative idea because I pull inspiration from music all the time, but I haven't gone so far as to like take a song and make a story from it.
What do you guys listen to when you're illustrating?
It's funny. Jake and I listen to the same music.
What is it?
Kind of synth. Well, not synthy pop.
Give me an artist. Who would it be?
Fits in the Tantrums.
Give me an artist that most people would know.
I've been listening to a ton of London Grammar lately. It's a kind of a British band. I don't know, how would you describe it? Sort of like Florence and the Machine, but softer, I guess.
You guys are hipsters. I didn't know that you guys are. You guys are getting real niche on me.
Yeah.
Empire of the Sun. Today was Foster the People.
Okay, yeah, that's about what I listen to as well.
But I do have a 70s, 80s playlist that I go back to every once in a while, which is
just
good.
That we're never in the same mood. So when he throws that on, I'm just like, not today.
Come on, Jake. I think if I were to do a book, like a children's book based on a song, I would probably pick a song by the Beatles because I know it would sell really well.
Oh, good point.
And
good point.
The song I would pick, I would probably do Help by the Beatles. I think it'd be a great children's book. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone and I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind. I've opened up the doors. Help me if you can. I'm feeling down. And I do appreciate you being around. Like, it's just got a good message. And I could see so many opportunities to do like visuals with that.
That's interesting. That is interesting. You get...
Lee's like, I don't see it,
No,
Jake.
it isn't. No, I'm just thinking about the copyright ramifications.
Yeah.
I actually illustrated Permission to Love. Who's that one by? I'm drawing a blank. If you Google Permission to Love, I made these dancing penguins that go with it, and I put it on my YouTube channel.
If you Google that, put on your safe search, just in case.
Yeah. The penguins, they have feathers. Let's just put it that way, okay? They're not featherless.
Okay.
It would be cool to do something like, Smells Like Teen Spirit, and to see what you could do with that. I don't even know what the lyrics are for that. I could never understand.
I think you can.
Kurt
Did you
Cobain.
ever hear Tori Amos's version of that song?
No.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm listening to it right after.
It's so good.
right
I like
podcast.
it better than the Nirvana one for sure. But it's the first time you can really get the brunt of what the song is.
Okay, I'll check it out.
It's really good. Anyway, okay, moving forward. These are
That was a weird question, but it was
it's
fun.
thought provoking for sure.
I would also probably do a Weird Al song. That would be fun too.
I'll add this one little side note too with the Beatles. That's the one band that everyone loves that I have never liked the Beatles, and I always feel kind of guilty about it.
You should.
I don't know why. I just cannot.
It's ridiculous.
Want to like
you don't like the Beatles.
This is, people are going to crucify me for saying this, but I like their arrangements done by other people. I think they had some amazing melodies. I'm with you. I don't like their performance of their songs, but I've liked other arrangements.
You have one in mind?
All of them.
You guys are dumb. What about Here Comes the Sun? Or
I mean, there's individual
In
ones
My Life,
that I can definitely listen to. And when it comes on the radio, I'm like, oh yeah, but I just would never have the Beatles in my music collection.
Yeah, me either.
Dang.
It's weird.
Not me. I love the Beatles. In fact, I went through when they posted all of their albums on Spotify. While I was working, I took a week and listened to one album each day. And before I would listen to the album, I would read the Wikipedia entry on the album so I could get the context of how this album came to be and what were the dynamics happening behind the scenes, because by the end of it, they kind of hated each other before they broke up, right? There was fights and things like that. I think they eventually it was good for them to separate, and that was probably better for everybody. But it was just interesting to know, while John Lennon is singing this particular song, Paul McCartney just wants to smash his face into the ground,
Well, same with the Rolling Stones. I think that's the dynamic of every band right before they break up.
Yeah.
All
yep.
right.
And SVS too. I mean, no.
We'll see. That remains to be seen. But Will, you're on notice.
That was TMI, Jake. I didn't really want to know your intimate details with the Beatles, but
all right, let's move forward.
Right now, there's a person listening to this that's saying, "Right on, Jake's my guy. We're Beatles fans together."
It's true.
And there's 9 out of 10 that aren't.
They're with me and Will. Yeah. I'll tell you this: as with the Beatles, they're classic. If you guys listen to current music, like Foster the People and just music that's out right now that's very 80s influenced, I say it all goes back to the most classic band of all time, which is New Order.
Yeah.
If you listen to a New Order album now, and it is every song could be on the radio now, and you would not be able to pick it out. It's not dated at all. It looks like people are just grabbing New Order and just kind of reordering New Order and
putting it in a new order.
So anyway, side note. All right, so these are general questions that just kind of came from random questions within the forum that I picked out. What is the biggest mistake that an amateur or student illustrators make, just in general? And while you guys ponder that, I have a definite answer for that one, which is back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast. Biggest mistake is not doing the groundwork in the beginning. The pre-visualization work is crucial. And that's why if you guys can study an entertainment design class, even if you're not going into entertainment design, you will change how you work in the beginning, because it just is normal in entertainment design and pre-vis work to do character studies and scene studies and little tests and color studies. It just comes with it. But nothing is worse, in my opinion, than seeing an image on the forum. It's at least halfway finished into full paint, and people are like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "Where is all the pre-work for this?" Because I want to see 5 sketches that could have worked, and then we'll see which one of them was the best one. And did you work out all the problems and all that stuff? Without that, with just showing one image, it leaves, and then no context for the image too. And so it's just a weak way to work, in my opinion. When it should be post 5 sketches, give a little write-up of what you're trying to say and what the image should feel like and what you're trying to leave the viewer with, and give the people who are viewing it some backstory so we can pick it in an informed way and not just be like, oh, it looks cool, or I don't like what happens is people post the image and then people start to micro focus. Well, like, I don't think the pinky is long enough, or your perspective could be a little lower when the whole image isn't actually working as a narrative. So they don't do enough groundwork to get to the finish.
I wouldn't have picked that. I think that's a problem, but I don't think it's the biggest mistake.
It's a good one, Lee, and it could be. But, this is the podcast where we have to disagree, or else it's not interesting.
What would you say it is, Jake? Are you disagreeing?
What is it to you?
Okay, so Lee is not wrong. I like your answer a lot. But I think for me, and it happened today, we were talking about this today, Jake. So we have an intern working with us who I had a few years ago, and I was teaching at the university at UVU in my illustration class, and she is doing great things right now. And as she left, we told her, well, we knew you were going to make it. You were going to be good. And then when she really left, I said to Jake, sometimes I question why I'm even there in the school, because on the first day or second day, you can tell who's doing really well and who's not. And it's like I didn't really have any influence over her because she came in, she was awesome, and she's still awesome, and she's doing great things. But if you drill down on the why, it is, for me, it's that she knew what she wanted. She had done her homework. She knew who the great illustrators were that she liked. And it surprises me how many of my students have no clue who's doing the work that they want to do. They don't know. So, and the analogy that I use is, if you follow sports at all, the baseball players, the basketball players, the football players, they all know who the pro players are that they love. They have their favorite players, and they could tell you everything about them. They could probably tell you where they lived growing up.
Good point.
They could tell you their favorite moves, what they're known for, what they do better than other people on the field. And they can tell you this when they're in high school. And these kids that I'm talking about are in college, and they have no clue. But she did. And there were two people in her class, her and this other guy, and they're the only two that I've seen that are doing noteworthy stuff right now. And they came into class that way. And it wasn't because they were just gifted. It was because they were observant and they were taking notes. And so,
yeah, I kind of agree with that, Will. I really do agree with that. And mine is a tangent of that, in that I think they, like you said, they don't know what they want. They don't know what an illustrator actually does day to day, right? They've never sat with an illustrator and saw what they've done, maybe interned with them for a week or something like that, and just seeing what the job entails. They don't know what the job entails at a animation studio. They don't even know what jobs are available, right? And there's kind of this, some students I've talked to haven't even opened an art of book. They want to work in animation, but they haven't looked at the art of, Monsters Inc., or they haven't looked at the art of Zootopia or something like that. And I'm like, how do you even know this is a thing you want to do if you don't even know like what's expected of you as an artist? So doing your homework, understanding who's the people doing the thing that you want to do, and knowing exactly what the job is. You might find out you wanted to work in an animation studio, and might find out after doing some homework that that's not at all what you want to do or what you're going to be good at. And maybe you're more geared towards being a freelance illustrator or something like that,
Remember those things that were going around on Facebook where it was like, for artists, and it was like, this is what my parents think art is. This is what my boss thinks art is. This is how it actually is, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like students need that. It's like they don't, because it's like, this is what the student thinks their career is going to be like.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be funny.
Right.
That'd be good.
All right. Should we wrap it up, or do you guys want to do one more, or we're kind of getting to the end of
Yeah,
our...
we've been going for about an hour. Let me see. There's a couple things, just quick hits. Why don't we do that? Let's do this like kind of a quick 1 or 2 sentence kind of thing. How can I do better in contests, and should I enter? My quick answer for that is yes, you should enter, because it gets your work out there. And like we talked about earlier, being a content creator and being comfortable in this field means putting your work out there, and contests are a great way to do it. The one thing I want to add here, and it's a big one, is read the fine print in the contest that you're entering, because I've seen 2 that were actually posted to our forum, and everybody's like, oh, this is a great contest, let's enter it. And once I read the fine print, I said, stop, do not enter this contest under any circumstances, because the contest wants to own all the work, including the copyright and everything. So any contest you enter, you should keep the copyright, and the place that you're entering the contest should not be able to use your image without payment or without any kind of notification or anything like that. So just be careful.
They're trying to get free work by running a contest.
That's right. And there's a lot of them out there, and some of them do it purposely, some of them do it unknowingly. But just be careful with that.
I'd say in order to do better in a contest, you really need to take the winners and deconstruct them and make a list of how they beat your image. And you've got to be humble. You've really got to just dissect it and make that list and just say, this is what they did do better than me, and start to incorporate those things in your work. Good.
This is going to be a tough one to answer quickly. Do you recommend going to college for illustration?
That's such a loaded question.
There's so many factors in that. I think if you can afford it, do it. If money's, art school's so expensive. But if money is a problem, I wouldn't go into debt for that. I would take what money what you do have, and maybe formulate some sort of self-learning program from some sort of online schools, paying tutors, getting internships, something like that. And if you're really smart and you're really motivated and you put yourself in contact with the right people, you might be able to get the same kind of education, if not a better education, for much, much cheaper.
Yeah.
You're going to find people that have experiences where they love their college experience and can say definitively they would not have the jobs that they have without it. You'll find people that say it was a waste of money. Same with online. So there is no answer. There's no way to answer that other than you need to do the homework yourself, and specifically with the programs you're thinking about going into, because they're definitely not all created equal.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I would have answered yes, definitely to that question, because there was kind of no other real way to do it. And now it's changed so dramatically with online offerings and combining that with local resources like community colleges that have really cheap, brick and mortar classes that you can go into, figure drawing sessions that are everywhere. And just the availability of such a wide array of choices, and the kind of this eclectic buffet where you can custom build your education. I almost think now that could be a better solution than going to a degree program, which now I think is becoming more limited, because a degree program has only its resources within X amount of miles around the school. Those are the people that you're going to learn from. Whereas an online combination, local city for the brick and mortar stuff, and then online stuff, you can pick from the whole world.
Yep.
So I don't know. Like Will said, it's varied, but there's a lot of choice right now, and we don't get picked because of the school that we went to. We don't get paid because of the school we went to. And so just be good.
Yeah. That's actually the main thing. Your goal is to have a portfolio that you can get work with. So figure out how to get that portfolio that you can get work with.
That's a good way to end it. I think that's all. That's a pretty good question to end on.
All right. Cool.
Jake, you want to take us out?
I'll take us out. Let me find my notes here just to make sure I say the right thing.
Jake's scrambling.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the 3 Point Perspective podcast. This was a fun one today. Thanks for getting those questions, Lee. So this podcast is made possible by svslearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts have been Will Terry. You can find him at willterry.com or on Instagram at willterryart, and check his videos out on YouTube. Check out Lee White. He's at leewhiteillustration.com, and his Instagram is at leewhiteillo. And myself, I'm Jake Parker. You can find my work at mrjakeparker.com or on Instagram at Jake Parker. And I also have videos on YouTube as well. So if you like this episode, please share it around. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. We would love it. And if you do, please leave a review. We'd love to hear what you think. If you're wanting to join in on this particular discussion and you have answers to some of these questions, log on to the svslearn.com forum, where we have posted this episode in its own thread for people to talk about what we've talked about here. Chime in over there and let us know your thoughts. All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you again next time.